Come on, Martell, I didn't park in your space.
No. But unfortunately, you did park in Lamont's space. He's not nearly as lenient as I am.
On three, fellas.
Can you believe that one of the most beloved sports comedies ever made was nearly dismissed as a forgettable summer distraction? The Replacements, released on August 11, 2000, carried a production budget of $50 million, starred two of Hollywood's most recognized names, and drew its central inspiration directly from a standoff that shook professional football to its core. Yet behind every laugh, every locker room speech, and every game-winning play hides a collection of genuinely surprising facts that even devoted fans have never thought to uncover. This video is about to change everything you thought you knew about this film. Number 1. The whole story was built around a real NFL strike. Before a single frame was shot, screenwriter Vince McEwen drew his entire premise from a documented chapter in professional football history. The 1987 NFL players' strike forced team owners to fill their rosters with amateur and semi-professional players for 3 consecutive weeks of regular season games. And the real Washington Redskins went on to win all 3 of those replacement contests without any of their regular starters suiting up. That same Redskins squad pushed forward and captured Super Bowl 22 at the end of that season. The film transformed that remarkable sequence of actual events into a fictional narrative centered on the Washington Sentinels, keeping the emotional and structural blueprint intact while changing enough identifying details to avoid legal complications. The fact that a genuine labor dispute produced genuine underdogs who genuinely won gave the story a grounded credibility that pure invention could never manufacture on its own. Every time a viewer wonders whether something like this could actually happen in professional sports, the answer sitting directly beneath the fiction is a firm and fully documented yes. Now that the foundation of the story is in place, things get far more personal with the man chosen to quarterback the whole production. Number 2. Keanu Reeves gained 23 pounds for the role. Keanu Reeves was already one of the most physically recognizable actors on Earth, following his work in Speed and the Matrix trilogy, but playing Shane Falco demanded a completely different body than the lean action figure audiences had come to associate with him. Reeves put on 23 pounds of muscle specifically for this production, transforming himself into someone who could convincingly stand in the pocket and absorb hits from professional athletes without the contact looking staged or absurd. The transformation worked so convincingly that the Baltimore Ravens, the actual NFL franchise whose stadium served as the primary filming location, extended Reeves a genuine tryout offer after production wrapped. That offer was not a promotional stunt arranged by Warner Brothers for extra publicity. The Ravens watched what this man could do on their field during months of active filming and decided they wanted to see more under controlled evaluative conditions. Reeves ultimately declined, but the fact that a working NFL organization considered the invitation credible enough to actually extend reveals how seriously he approached every physical dimension of his preparation for this role. That dedication on the field was matched by an equally serious commitment to authenticity in the game sequences that the audience ultimately watches. Number 3. Real professional football players filled the on-field roster. Director Howard Deutsch made a production decision early in the process that separated this film from virtually every other sports movie in the genre. Rather than relying entirely on stunt performers and clever camera angles to simulate professional football, Deutsch recruited approximately 45 professional players drawn from former NFL rosters and the Canadian Football League to populate the game sequences throughout the film. The principal cast members were sent through a genuine 3-week football training camp before a single game scene was committed to film. When cameras rolled during the actual gameplay footage, those recruited professionals were instructed to play and to hit exactly as they would during any regular game. The blocking was real. The tackling was real. The physicality that audiences experienced on screen was not performed for dramatic effect, but simply captured as it unfolded naturally. That decision meant the cast members who appeared in those sequences absorbed genuine contact from people who made their living delivering exactly that kind of force. The football looked authentic because, to a significant and sometimes painful degree, it genuinely was. Behind the cameras, throughout all of that physicality, a cinematographer with a particularly distinguished pedigree was responsible for turning everything into something audiences could follow. Number 4. The film's cinematographer had already shot some of Hollywood's most iconic work. Every frame of The Replacements passed through the lens of Tak Fujimoto, a director of photography whose career reads like a checklist of culturally defining American films. Fujimoto had already served as cinematographer on The Silence of the Lambs, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and Melvin and Howard long before arriving on this project. His visual instincts shaped how the stadium sequences felt from a spectator's perspective, how the locker room scenes communicated claustrophobia and camaraderie at the same time, and how the football action conveyed speed and physical impact without losing the spatial clarity that lets viewers follow what is actually happening on the field. Bringing that level of experience to what the studio's marketing positioned as a crowd-pleasing summer comedy gave the film a visual polish that elevated it well above its genre contemporaries. Few viewers sitting in multiplexes during August 2000 would have connected the images unfolding before them to the same eye responsible for Clarice Starling descending into a basement toward a serial killer. But the craft was present in every shot regardless. The visual quality Fujimoto captured was enhanced further by the real-world location where the production actually set up its cameras. Number 5. The stadium scenes were filmed at the Baltimore Ravens' actual home. The Washington Sentinels play their home games in Washington, D.C. within the world of the story. But the production filmed all of its football stadium sequences at PSI-NET Stadium in Baltimore, Maryland, the facility now known as M&T Bank Stadium and home to the Baltimore Ravens. The stadium appeared on screen under the fictional designation Nextel Stadium, and the surrounding Baltimore landscape bled naturally into several exterior shots, including visible glimpses of the iconic Domino sugar plant situated near the Inner Harbor. The city of Baltimore provided not just the physical structure of a genuine NFL stadium, but also the operational context of a real franchise working environment, making the coordination between the production company and Ravens management a continuous logistical undertaking across the months of principal photography. Shooting inside a working professional venue rather than a purpose-built facsimile gave every crowd reaction, every field entrance, and every broadcast booth setup an authenticity that no soundstage reproduction could plausibly achieve. While the stadium delivered realism in abundance, the film's commercial performance upon release told its own story of competition that the characters themselves would have understood completely. Number 6. The film opened third at the box office behind two formidable rivals. When The Replacements reached North American theaters on August 11, 2000, it entered one of the more competitive late summer weekends of that year and landed in third place on the charts. The film debuted behind Space Cowboys and Hollow Man, which was finishing its second consecutive week at the top spot, earning $11,039,214 in its opening frame. That opening position might have signaled a film in commercial trouble, but the trajectory that followed over subsequent weeks delivered a very different narrative. The Replacements ultimately collected $44.7 million domestically and an additional $5.3 million from international markets, pushing its worldwide gross comfortably past the $50 million mark. For a comedy operating with a $50 million production budget, recovering the full investment from theatrical receipts represented a genuinely solid outcome, particularly given that the critical reception the film received was substantially cooler than the enthusiasm from paying audiences. That growing gap between what reviewers wrote and what ticket buyers actually felt became one of the more persistently interesting subplots surrounding the film throughout its release window. That specific divergence between critics and audiences became even more vivid once the formal review numbers arrived. Number 7. Critics and audiences disagreed dramatically about the film's quality. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film holds an approval rating of just 41%, based on 108 professional reviews, with the site's consensus pointing toward cliched characters and an outcome that generates no genuine suspense. On Metacritic, it received a weighted average of 30 out of 100 from 32 critics, placing it in the category of generally unfavorable reception. Roger Ebert awarded it 2 out of 4 stars and described it as entertainment painted in broad strokes, 2 coats thick. But audiences polled by CinemaScore during that opening weekend gave the film an average grade of A- on the standard A+ to F measurement scale. That particular divergence, a 30 from professional critics sitting alongside an A- from actual cinema audiences, captures something fundamental about what The Replacements delivered versus what formal criticism evaluated it against. The film was not pursuing structural invention or thematic complexity. It was pursuing the feeling of rooting for people the world had given up on, and audiences who arrived looking for that specific experience left with it fully intact. One of the film's most enduring contributions to popular culture emerged not from the football at all, but from a musical selection deployed at 2 pivotal and emotionally contrasting moments. Number 8. I Will Survive became the film's most iconic musical moment. The soundtrack was assembled by composer John Debney, who contributed an original orchestral score alongside a curated selection of popular tracks spanning multiple decades and genres. The selection that burned most completely into viewer memory was Gloria Gaynor's 1978 disco anthem I Will Survive, which appeared in 2 dramatically contrasting moments within the film's structure. The Replacement players first encounter the song while sitting in a jail cell following a brawl with the striking starters, spontaneously dancing together in their holding area and transforming a moment of collective humiliation into one of entirely accidental unity. The same track returns at the film's conclusion as the players celebrate their playoff-clinching victory on the field, completing a musical arc that bookends the team's entire journey from arrested outsiders to unlikely champions. Using one song to frame both the low point and the triumph of the group's shared experience gave the film an emotional symmetry that few sports comedies achieve through their musical choices. The soundtrack also featured Young MC's Bust a Move and Gary Glitter's Rock and Roll Part 2, but no other selection on the album carried the weight or the long-term cultural resonance of Gaynor's anthem. Those musical choices that gave the film its emotional heartbeat were matched by a casting development that gave the whole production its final and most poignant farewell. Number 9. Jack Warden's role as team owner was his final screen performance. Jack Warden, the veteran character actor whose 6-decade career produced an Academy Award nomination for Heaven Can Wait and celebrated work across 12 Angry Men and Shampoo, appeared as Washington Sentinel's owner, Edward O'Neill, in this film. The role marked his final appearance in a theatrical feature film before his death on July 19, 2006, at the age of 85. O'Neill is constructed as a double-talking, manipulative businessman who never hesitates to abandon a commitment when a more personally convenient outcome presents itself, requiring Warden to project authority and untrustworthiness simultaneously within relatively limited screen time. He accomplished both without visible effort, delivering the kind of efficiently constructed supporting performance that had defined his entire professional career across dozens of productions in film and television. The knowledge that this particular project served as the final chapter of that long and distinguished screen life gives the film a significance extending well beyond its commercial function as a crowd-pleasing summer release. While Warden's presence gave the film its sense of institutional gravity, another cast member brought an entirely different and considerably more surprising kind of distinction to the ensemble. Number 10. Jon Favreau's character was a Gulf War Purple Heart recipient and SWAT officer. Long before becoming the architect of Iron Man and a foundational creative figure in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Jon Favreau played Daniel Bateman, the replacement team's linebacker and defensive captain. Bateman was written as a walk-on player from Michigan State and a Gulf War veteran who received a Purple Heart, currently serving on the Washington, D.C. police SWAT team at the point he joins the Sentinels roster. The character's central and most comedic trait was a total behavioral transformation when placed in any adversarial environment. Reserved and nearly expressionless during normal social interaction, Bateman became visibly and alarmingly unhinged the moment any competitive situation presented itself, channeling what the film frames as combat-trained aggression into football contact with genuinely unsettling enthusiasm. Favreau inhabited this characterization with considerable comic specificity, making Bateman's intensity feel rooted in actual psychological history rather than simply exaggerated for laughs. It represented the kind of ensemble character work that demonstrates range without demanding dramatic weight. And it remains among the more memorable individual performances the film contains. That same investment in building characters with specific and unusual backgrounds extended to another cast member whose connection to a real institution made his fictional role remarkably precise. Number 11. The deaf tight end character was connected to a real university for the deaf. The Washington Sentinels tight end, Brian Murphy, played by David Denman in his very first feature film appearance, was not simply written as a deaf athlete included for easy dramatic contrast. Coach McGinty states within the film that Murphy attended Gallaudet University and would have been a first-round NFL draft selection had he not been born deaf. Gallaudet University, located in Washington, D.C., is the only university in the world designed specifically to serve deaf and hard-of-hearing students as its primary population, making the reference precise rather than generically inspirational. Murphy's deafness becomes structurally central to the film's climax when the game-winning touchdown play is called specifically because stadium crowd noise creates absolutely no competitive disadvantage for a receiver who cannot hear it regardless. That narrative logic transforms what could have been a straightforward disability inclusion gesture into a story about how a condition framed as a limitation becomes a genuine tactical advantage under exactly the right circumstances. Denman, who is not deaf in real life, later became widely known through a very different role on the American version of The Office. The layers of carefully constructed specificity running through the full ensemble also extended to one character drawn directly and entirely from a different sport and a different country. Number 12. The Welsh kicker was written as a professional soccer player and pub owner. Rhys Ifans delivered what many viewers consider the film's most consistently entertaining individual performance as Nigel Gruff, a Welsh professional soccer player and pub owner recruited specifically to serve as the replacement team's place kicker. Gruff carried the nickname The Leg, based on his demonstrated ability to kick a football the entire length of a standard playing field. And the character was also built around a significant gambling addiction and an unapologetic habit of smoking on the field during live game action. His construction reflected the film's overall approach to its ensemble, in which every replacement player carried a specific and sometimes genuinely bizarre credential that explained their presence on the roster without making their inclusion feel arbitrary or convenient. Gruff's most pivotal story contribution arrives during the team's second game, when he connects on a 65-yard field goal that reverses a contest the Sentinels appeared certain to lose. Evans, who had already appeared in Notting Hill and would later portray the villainous Lizard in The Amazing Spider-Man, brought authentic eccentricity to the role without allowing the performance to slip into self-parody. That investment in specific and credible characterization across the full ensemble reflected something essential about the director who assembled all of these pieces and shaped them into a coherent, finished film. Number 13. Director Howard Deutsch brought a teen comedy pedigree to this sports film. Howard Deutsch arrived at The Replacements carrying a directorial resume built almost entirely on John Hughes productions from the 1980s. Deutsch had directed both Pretty in Pink and Some Kind of Wonderful, two films that became defining entries in the teen romantic comedy genre and helped establish Hughes as one of that decade's most commercially reliable creative forces. Moving from the emotional landscape of teenage social exclusion to the broad physical comedy and inspirational sports architecture of The Replacements required a genuine tonal shift. But Deutsch brought the same instinct for character warmth that had made his Hughes collaborations connect with audiences across different generations. The replacement players, much like the misfit teenagers in those earlier films, were fundamentally people existing at the margin of a world that had decided definitively they did not belong there. And the director's comfort with that emotional territory showed in how the ensemble gradually came together across the film's runtime. Whether the resulting film achieved the lasting cultural impact of those earlier productions depended entirely on the expectations a viewer carried through the door. But the foundational creative impulse connecting those very different projects remained consistent throughout every frame Deutsch put on screen. And so, more than 2 decades after first appearing in theaters during the summer of 2000, The Replacements endures as something professional critics never fully endorsed, but audiences have consistently returned to: a film about second chances that keeps earning second chances entirely on its own terms. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. We hope this video on the weird and wonderful facts behind The Replacements gave you a brand new appreciation for a film that has clearly stood the test of time. And if you have never seen it, or if it has simply been a while since your last rewatch, now might be the perfect moment to revisit Shane Falco, Coach McGinty, and the most unlikely group of players ever assembled for one more shot at the dream. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss our next deep dive. We'll see you in the next one.